We have a special program this morning, a debate in which the former National Assembly member for Serekunda and joint leader of the People's Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI, is facing off against a well-known activist and social commentator. The debate is the idea of Halifa Sallah in response to Madi Jobarteh's comment as the funeral and tribute service for Sallah Sanding took place on Tuesday. Featuring Mr. Halifa Sallah debating Mr. Madi Jobarteh for what the outspoken activist said earlier in the week about some of our political leaders, including Mr. Sallah, as the country finally laid to rest a man widely hailed as a national hero. Let's remind ourselves of what Madi said on Tuesday as part of a taxpayer-funded funeral and tribute ceremony for Sallah Sanding organized by the Barrow-led government.
The president, Adama Barrow, and all the coalition leaders, coalition parties, they benefited from Sallah, but they all betrayed Sallah. From Adama Barrow to Ousainou Darboe to Halifa Sallah to Sidia Jatta to Fatoumatta Tambajang to Assetou Touré, Amai Fati, Henry Gomez, and so on. All those coalition leaders, they betrayed Sallah. And so it's a shame that they all came here to try to show remorse, to try to celebrate Sallah, yet failed to implement the ideals, the objectives which made Sallah stand up. So they have all betrayed Sallah, and that is very sad.
Mr. Sallah, Mr. Jobarteh, welcome to West Coast Radio. And if I may start right away with you, Mr. Sallah, what is wrong with what we just heard there? What did Madi not get right to warrant this open debate to, I suppose, set the record straight as far as you're concerned?
It is my conviction that criticism must be based on truth, good faith, and the public interest. Because I am an elderly statesperson, people should criticize me, but based on truth, good faith, and the public interest. What Madi said was not true, was not based on good faith, and to mislead the public is not in the public interest. That's why I challenge him to indict me.
Okay. Madi, what is Mr. Sallah missing in what you were trying to make, the point you were trying to make, and what is that point to begin with?
Yeah, to begin with, I think Mr. Sallah missed the very things, values that he expressed just now. Because certainly I said the truth. Sallah Sanding rose up on April 14th. In his hands, I understand, had the gopher demands. And of course, on his placard and in his speech, called for electoral reforms. This is April 2014, 2016. Earlier, in 2015, gopher, that is Gambia Opposition for Electoral Reforms, constituted by DOI, UDP, GMC, GPDP, and NRP, signed and submitted 11 points for electoral reforms to the IEC, to the President, and to Jesse Jackson, and I think to the United Nations or the AU. The signatories to that petition were Ousainou Darboe and Halifa Sallah. Now, that gopher demand goes back to 2012 when that gopher itself was established. Now, we can go back to 2010. UDP, when Femi Peters in 2009 was sentenced to 1 year in jail for using a loudspeaker, UDP challenged the Public Order Act in the courts, which decision came later in 2018 by the Supreme Court. Earlier, to still go back, in 2001, when the students were massacred in 2000, an Indemnity Act was put before the bill was put before the National Assembly. At the time, Hamad Ba and Sidia Jatta were members of the National Assembly. In protest, they marched out to not even discuss that Indemnity Act. Now, these are laws on our elections, laws regarding our freedoms, our rights as sovereign citizens of this country, which have been well captured in the manifesto of Adama Barrow as the candidate of the coalition, and as well highlighted in the MOU of the coalition. such that when we get to 2017, therefore, Halifa Sallah needs to tell us whether himself as a National Assembly member, as a member of DOI, and all the political parties that constitute the coalition, whether the coalition exists, regardless, they were the parties that came around the coalition and their president, whether they had effected the forms, such that when we look at the manifesto of Barrow, we, on the chapter or section, (91D) to secure the tenure of they themselves, the National Assembly members, if they have to leave their seat. Number 2, to remove section 62 about the age limit. Number 3, the Freedom of Information Act, which came into place eventually. And number 4 is to so actually, they actually did only 3 out of the 22. Okay. And when you look at those 3, directly benefit them as National Assembly members, as politicians, as political parties. So what untruth, what falsehood have I said?
Okay.
And I want to challenge Mr.
Okay. I'll throw the question to him. Thank you, Madi. Mr. Sallah, back to you. Madi has just established, according to him, the truthfulness of what he said on Tuesday. What do you find untrue about what he said on Tuesday and what he just said moments ago?
What Madi has said right now proves that my contract with the Gambian people and the Gambian nation has been fulfilled to the letter. Everything he is reading, including that petition for Jammeh to facilitate electoral reform, my hand is there.
What he said out of 22
I'm
points.
coming. No. I'm saying everything he's reading now. My hand is there in drafting it to the Barrow Manifesto. Everything. I fulfill my contract. He said I betrayed Sandeng. How? His proof, Sandeng had what was our petition and call for electoral reform. Young people of the different parties call each other to talk about demonstration. Did the Doi youth participate in demonstration? No. Why? Because Doi is enlightened and enlightens its people. Section 134 of the amended, as he said, we introduced the petition in 2015. July, what did Jammeh do? To come up with a blanket reform of the Elections Act, requiring 1 million to register a political party, 500,000 to be a presidential candidate, 50,000 to be a National Assembly member, 10,000 to be a councillor. If you are a resident outside, you cannot lead a political party. So essentially, he was making it impossible for political parties to function. Is that a positive response to our petition? No. So what was our option? 134 says that 6 months before elections, the Independent Electoral Commission must not engage in any significant change of the Elections Act. So if you go and petition, what he does not know, Peter,
yes,
on the 14th of April,
yes,
I was here with my colleague, Usainu Dabo. We were supposed to engage in a debate. We could not, because we were told that some people were arrested. And your radio station was not willing to take the risk, not knowing what we were going to say. It was then that I wanted to pin my colleague that it is good to tell all our people the truth, that he was above 65 and would not be able to stand in the 2016 presidential election. And that 134 has already indicated we cannot change Elections Act 6 months before. So it was a hopeless situation. Jammeh will not change, effect any reform. So the only route was to build a coalition. Unfortunately, we could not enter the debate. Sallah was arrested. So, where is our betrayal? If your leaders do not educate you to know what you're supposed to do, and we educate our people to know what to do, and what do? We proceeded with coalition building. And on the 2nd of December 2016, for the first time in Gambian history, we uprooted Jammeh. Our tactic and strategy were implemented to the letter. And it succeeded. That is the truth. If anybody betrayed Sandeng, let him look for somebody else, not us. Now, when we took over, we had the objective clearly spelled out of a 3-year term. But people must understand what an agreement is and what a constitution is. When we appointed or elected Barrow, we had the power to write all those things that we wrote. It's good faith. But when Barrow took over, he took over as the executive president of the Gambia, under the constitution of the Gambia.
Meaning what?
He did not owe any allegiance to any coalition or anybody. He could have only done so in good faith. And we were trying to exploit good faith. But when he took over, all those who were around him encouraged him to build up the executive might of appointing and dismissing ministers at will. An elementary knowledge of our constitution knows that it is cabinet that formulates policy. I had no power to formulate policy. It is the National Assembly that considers bills. We had 4 members in the National Assembly. Under the Constitution, you have to have simple majority, 2/3 majority in some portion, or 3/4 majority, such as changing the Constitution, before you can have any effect in the National Assembly. And let me educate him again. You see, they talk and talk and talk, and they don't understand the Constitution, they don't understand the laws. You see, let me just give you an example quickly, because we don't have the time.
Sure, go ahead.
There is an election bill currently. If you look at clause 147 of the election bill, it is in line with section 130 of the Elections Decree 1996, which states that if you want to stand as a candidate, National Assembly election, you must be granted leave of absence during the period of the election, and you return to your work. That's what the Elections Act 1996 says, 130. 147 clause 147 of the election bill, that's what it's saying. It wants to introduce that. But the Constitution, section 170, is saying that you must ask for 1 year leave without pay.
Okay.
So when these people, and you can see, we unlike Madi, you see, we've written, me and Sam, a whole analysis of the elections bill to guide the nation. So you see, you can effect the introduction of a bill. The National Assembly can, if they are inexperienced, even pass the bill. And then somebody will go to the Supreme Court and throw it in the dustbin, because it is against the provision of the Constitution.
Okay. All right. Madi, back to you.
No, let me conclude.
Okay.
Let me conclude, just to show that he has no basis of argument. You see, for us, there was no basis of any of this reform. The primary thing was the constitutional reform. It was introduced. You were there, everybody heard. I told them that what they were doing was a long journey. They were not sincere. That the constitution that we were considering was not like 1996, when these people had suspended the 1970 constitution, and they can go into a spree to amend anything they want. 1997 constitution states very clearly that if you want to change it under section 226, you can only take two routes. The ones that could be changed by the National Assembly without a referendum, and the others that must be changed with a referendum. I said, if we want the journey to be short, let us blanket change those ones that we could change in the National Assembly, and then blanket take those ones to the referendum. And this was a time when there was at least some understanding between the UDP. They were part of the government. It could have been easily done. They did not take that route. By the time they come again, their internal contradiction had built up. Some had been expunged from the, removed from the cabinet, and the National Assembly he's talking about was no longer a uniform body of a coalition. It was people elected on their party ticket, and they were operating on party lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sallah. Madi, Mr. Sallah saying that
I get the point.
all the 22 points actually...
I get the point, and certainly Mr. Sallah can't educate me about the Constitution, with all due respect to him. And in this, I know the Constitution, and as much as he does. And what he's presented so far, if anything, is an attempt to mislead me, which also he cannot do. You see, Peter, no one doubts the efforts of Mr. Sallah pre-2016 or pre-2017, and many other Gambians contributed to what we eventually had to remove this dictatorship. There's no doubt about that. But this country is a civilized state, nation. We have a state, and the state has obligations. And officials in that state have obligations to perform by law. Now, Mr. Sallah, when we got to 2017, he said to the media that he does not wish to take a position in the cabinet, that he wants to go to the National Assembly. I can quote him. Fatu Network reported Halifa Sallah reveals intention to contest parliamentary elections on 27 February 2017. We need to get the best National Assembly that acts as an oversight institution, holds the government accountable, and stands for the Gambian people. This is the assembly we want. So you see, the National Assembly has a purpose. National Assembly members have an obligation. He and his coalition members can argue here who did what and so on. As a citizen, as a sovereign citizen, what I know is Halifa Sallah, like Adama Barrow, and all elected and appointed public officials have a duty towards me to perform. And they have not performed that. Because the evidence is there. The Elections Act, regardless of how much summary or analysis is done, the Elections Act, 7 years is sitting in the National Assembly. It has not been done. Now, you said we look at this constitution piecemeal. They didn't do that. But nothing stops Halifa Sallah on his own as a National Assembly member, for which he has the power to do, to submit a private member's bill to target any specific section of the constitution to change. Now, they didn't do that, but Samba Jallow, minority leader at the time, 2017, submitted a private member's bill for the changing of section 91(1)(d). And they voted for it. The exorbitant fees that Jammeh imposed disregarding their 2015 proposals. When they came 2017, they immediately amended that section to reduce the fees for President, National Assembly, Mayor, Councillor. Why didn't Halifa Sallah submit a member's bill for a time limit? A member's bill for absolute majority. A member's bill for the creation of a constituency boundaries commission, which are all established, stated in their manifesto. So Halifa got to understand this. All right? And because I see a lot of misleading stuff around, that regardless of what happened until 2017, when they drafted 16, they drafted the MOU and the coalition. And Halifa went on the campaign talking about the value of the 3 years program to end self-perpetuating rule, to build. In 2019, October, he was standing on the floor of the parliament explaining how the coalition crumbled, that they want to save the Gambia. Halifa did not go to the National Assembly on the ticket of the coalition. He went there in his own personal volition. He chose to be a National Assembly member. He went on the ticket of DOI. Perform your function as a National Assembly member. You have an individual responsibility. Each one of them have an individual responsibility to perform their functions. Now, apart from this lack of legal reforms, institutional reforms, you look at the Auditor General's report, the massive corruption, the number of illegal, unconstitutional actions by this president. National Assembly members, you have an obligation. You have the power and the tool in the Constitution to discipline the executive. The president has multiple times conducted unconstitutional acts, and he was not held to account, to the point that even the Supreme Court declared the president's action unconstitutional in the case of Yakumba Jaita. There was no genuine, urgent matter to put articles of impeachment on the floor of the National Assembly for that action, because the Supreme Court itself said the president acted unconstitutionally. So our coalition political parties and their leaders who came to acquire the executive and the legislature, they had the powers in the Constitution, in the standing orders, in other laws of the Gambia, to protect the Gambia, the best interests of the Gambia. But that has not happened. Halifa himself was the chair of the PEC committee, the Public Enterprises Committee. There is not a more corrupt sector of Gambian society than the public enterprises. Not only corrupt, but inefficient. And it was Halifa's duty to make sure our public enterprises, their enterprises, businesses, to raise revenue for the government. They don't do that. They don't pay dividends. Not only that, they don't perform